So I want to give some initial impressions on these stones. These are all Suehiro stones. This one is a 320 traditional type. This is part of their new Cerax lineup, which is more of a ceramic based, kind of like the Coarser, Nanowa Pro, and Sharpening Pro stones. The 320 in particular is actually labeled on the box with the number 800. Now I mentioned this in the sharpening video, which I'll link down in the doobly-doo, that actually shows all these stones in use and my thoughts as I'm going through them. But I mentioned this in that video. This number 800 on the box does not represent the actual grit. The actual grit is a 320 grit stone. So don't be confused by that if you decide you want to pick up one of these stones. I got this at a local shop. They had it labeled as an 800 grit water stone, and that's what I paid for it, thinking I was getting an 800 grit stone, when in actuality it's 320 grit. So that's a big difference if you're expecting an 800. Anyway, this is 320, 700, and this stone is a combination 1K, 6K. So I got a 4-stone lineup here. Let me get the boxes out of the way. I paid roughly 42 bucks for this one. I think this one was like 45, 50, and this one was like 65, somewhere in that ballpark. So I got all the stones all together, which is basically 4 different grits, from reprofiling all the way to a nice polished edge for, I don't know, what is that, about 150 bucks, somewhere in that ballpark. It's not bad at all, considering the price. It's fairly decent. And these stones are fairly thick, with the exception of the combo stone, which, if you've ever purchased a combo stone, they all come a little thinner just because you've got 2 grits, one on each side. I'm gonna go through these stones real quick and just give you some of my impressions. This 320 grit stone, like I said, it was labeled as an 800. It's very, very soft. It wears pretty decently. I thought it was gonna wear faster than it has. I gotta give it credit. It's kept its shape very well. However, it is so soft. And again, I mentioned this in my other video, but I dropped this about that high off the counter, which is maybe 2 or 3 inches. Just I was setting the stone down, and it fell out of my hands. And when it hit, it chipped out right here. So I took some sandpaper and very lightly went over it. And I'm not kidding, I went maybe 5 or 6 passes, and that was the result. This stone is incredibly soft. It's not very dense, it's very porous. It's even kind of light for the size. It's actually a light stone. So it's not very dense at all. All of these stones require a soak, 10 minutes or longer. I'd actually say probably 20 minutes, especially for this one, which is more of a traditional style stone. They all get muddy if you allow them to. Now what I mean by that is, if you constantly flush water across the tops of them, they won't develop much of a mud. But if you allow that water to start to dry and condensate, you will actually start to get a very thick mud on each one of these stones. Now that can be a really good thing if you're trying to remove your scratch pattern. The mud can really help you remove scratches from previous grits. Especially on this 320 stone, I was able to get rid of my 140 Atoma diamond scratches in, I don't know, maybe 50 passes, which is outstanding for a 320 grit stone in my opinion. However, just putting a V edge on a knife, it's not the fastest. It's not the fastest stone. It's very 320 like. It's not fast, it's not slow, it cuts exactly like you would think a 320 should. Other than the softness, I do like this stone, but as you can see, all my corners I've rounded out because each one of them chipped. And that's just, you know, putting it in a bucket of water or hitting another stone, they just started chipping out. So I went ahead and I rounded them out. If this stone held up a little better, I would have better things to say about it. But because of how soft it is, I'm not a big fan of this guy. It does cut really well. It seems to cut pretty much any steel I've put against it, and I've used it against, well, 440C, AUS 8, 8CR13, and I used it against S30V, and it seemed to do the job on each one of those steels. So I've got no complaints, you know, in that fashion. It's just how soft it is. That's my only beef with it. Now the 700 grit stone came, and so did the combo stone, came with these little cleaning stones. I'm not sure what they are. They feel like chalk. Another thing about all four of these stones, they all had some sort of coating across them that I had to remove. Now with this stone, I actually lapped it with loose silicon carbide grit. With these other stones, I just used the supplied cleaning stone, just went across the tops of them for a few, maybe a minute, minute and a half, went across the tops of them. That removed whatever coating was on it, and they started cutting properly. Without doing that, as you slide your knife across it, it slips and slides. It's a very slick surface. It loads up really quickly, and very little cutting actually takes place on your knife. So be aware of that if you decide to get these. They do come with that coating, and it has to be removed. I'm sure if you kept at it sharpening, you would eventually wear through it, but it's going to be a hassle and it's going to drive you nuts. So to save yourself from going through that, I would say lap the tops of them as soon as you get them. Now the 700 grit stone is probably my favorite out of this entire bunch. It cut fairly well. It's fairly hard. I wouldn't put any of these stones in the hard category like a Sharpening Pro or a Nanowa Pro. I would put them a notch under, but nowhere near as soft as this guy. So if there is a such thing as a medium range hardness for water stones, these guys would fall into that category. Like I said, on all of these, this will develop a mud if you allow it to. It does require soaking. It's hard, it's dense, it doesn't gouge easily, whereas all these other stones do gouge easily. This one does not. It seems like it's closer to what a Sharpening or a Nanowa Pro is than any of the other ones. It left a really nice, muddy, hazy kind of finish that was extremely sharp. It was fairly refined for the grit. If someone handed me a knife sharpened off of this grit stone, I would probably say it was 1,000 grit, maybe even 1,500. I never would have guessed it was a 700 grit sharpening edge. As you can see, none of these really load up. As long as you flush the stone when you're done in use, whatever swarf you have comes right off. And if it doesn't, you've got the cleaning stone to take care of that. So I'm really impressed with this one. This one, like I said, by far is my favorite. Now this guy is the combo stone, and it comes with, like I said, a 1K and 6K. It also comes with this neat little carry case, which just folds up. It's got ventilation holes right here, so if you leave the top off, you can actually let your stone dry inside of this. If you do that though, I would definitely advise you to flip the stone over constantly, maybe every 5 or 6 hours. That way it gets even drying. The 1K side was again very predictable. It's a 1K stone, leaves a 1K finish, leaves a 1K edge, cuts like a 1K should. It's not too hard, not too soft. Well, it's softer than I'm used to, but I could get used to this stone. It's not bad in any sort of way. I enjoyed sharpening on this quite a bit. If you were looking for a one stone combo just to keep your kitchen knife sharp or just to maintain your pocket knife sharpness, this guy could do it. Now, it's not going to be great for reprofiling a knife, but if you've already got an edge on an existing blade, this will definitely keep it going. The 6K side had a very creamy kind of feel to it, especially when the mud started to build up. It created a cushion between the knife and the actual stone, and it just felt creamy. I don't know how to describe it any better than that. It is softer than the 1K. It's almost as soft as the 320, but there's a difference because this one isn't as dense. There's a texture difference which creates this one. It gives this one a creamy kind of feel, and this one just feels coarse and porous. It almost feels like there's pebbles, like there's a pebbly surface texture across this stone. This one is just completely smooth and creamy. I really like this one. This guy, it's an excellent bang for the buck. It does have labeled on the side 6K right here, and this one did say 1K, but it does fade very quickly. Now the package also has it right here. It tells you the color and what grit it is. So if you lose track of what's what, the package will give it to you. I would still recommend taking a magic marker and probably on the sides writing what grit each stone is. Unless this is going to be your only primary stone, you know, it's pretty easy to remember what color is what grit. But I've got so many stones, I'm liable to forget. As a matter of fact, I did that as I was thinning this knife out. I thought I was using the 1K side, and I was actually using the 6K. And I couldn't figure out why the scratches weren't coming out, while other parts were getting a very bright polish. So, anyway, my own ignorance for not paying more attention to what the stone said and what the packaging read as. This case serves as a base to sharpen on. It's got rubber feet right here, which do everything they need to do. It keeps the stone in place as you're putting lots of pressure down. I was able to use it with zero problems whatsoever. All in all, these stones do what they're supposed to do at a very decent price. Let me give you a shot of this edge and bevel. Like I said, I'll put a link down in the description of me sharpening this knife. Now, I stopped on the 700K where I was flattening these bevels. After that video was done, I went back to 1K and I did a little more work on them and then did some light stropping, and this is the final result. We turn this light out, let the camera adjust and you'll get a better shot of it. It's got a hazy, muddy finish. You can definitely see the scratch pattern in it in the right lighting. The edge bevel itself is 6K, done on this stone. It too left a muddy, hazy kind of finish. But after stropping, it did brighten up quite a bit. Not sure how well that's going to show up. There we go. I've got no complaints on the actual sharpness of the knife, but because this stone is a little muddy, if you want to get a really high sharpness, you may need to let it dry out a little bit and then do some really ultralight passes to get a nice refined apex. If you just use the stone with the mud, that mud's going to plow into the apex and round it out a little bit. There's no way around it. That's just the way it works. Now, it's plenty sharp for me, and I think anybody who uses, a standard knife in the kitchen would say this is everything they need it to be for the work they're going to do. But if you're looking for that hair whittling sharp edge that, lasts for 2 or 3 cuts, you're going to have to play with this stone a little bit before you're going to get it. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me a comment. Thanks for watching.